So, with that, I would like to welcome everybody to Bridges and Video Games. I'm going to talk about the structural design and capacity of various bridges I've seen in some of the video games I've played, featuring none of the games that you see on the screen right now. I'll discuss a little bit about bridge design, what kind of forces we're looking at, what video games get right, and oh so terribly wrong. So here's my credentials. Before I start, is anybody here an engineer?
Yeah.
Awesome. Is anybody here a civil engineer?
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you structural? Heck yeah, awesome. So, here. Now, a little bit more stringent. Does anybody here work for the Georgia Department of Transportation?
Oh, no.
Okay, cool. Oh, somebody in the back. Awesome. Please don't take me for granted. The word, we love it. So professionally, I went to Georgia Tech. I got the Tech Polo. Go Jackets. I graduated in 2015. I've been working for my company for over 10 years in design, bridge maintenance, and inspection. I'm a licensed PE, professional engineer in the states of Georgia and South Carolina, and Puerto Rico. CBI, as you saw on the first slide, that stands for Certified Bridge Inspector, so I've been the team lead on some inspections out there. And I also helped contribute to the 2024 American Society of Civil Engineers Georgia Infrastructure Report Card. So hopefully this means I actually know what I'm talking about, and some of the structural engineers out there hopefully will agree with me. And if not, we can have a discussion. So my nerdy credentials, my very first Christmas was playing Pokemon Yellow, and I didn't want to open any of my other presents after that. I got my Game Boy, had Pokemon Yellow, was very happy with it, and my parents were like, Wes, you have to come in here and actually open your other presents. I'm like, fine, all right. These numbers I took back in February, and the hours on Steam and Switch, I have played several more since then. The 1,200 hours on my Switch is definitely out of date because I have over 1,300 in one single game. I definitely have too much time on my hands. And then, of course, a Game Boy DS, I had a PS2, Xbox 360, and then again, I have way too much Splatoon merch to be considered normal. I also have Splatoon badge ribbons if you want them later. So, just another quick disclaimer. What this presentation is intended to be is informative, hopefully. Possibly interactive, except with my friends that are sitting in the front row and are going to be messing with me. Maybe comedic. I think I'm funny. My mom says I'm funny. And then, a misguided and egotistical attempt at all of the above. And of course, I'm trying to make it spoiler-free for the video games I talk about. There's one spoiler that I blurred out. Hopefully, it doesn't mess anything up. Hopefully, it does not even register. And then what this presentation is not a representation of my company. Even though you don't know who that is, I'm not legally responsible, or they're not legally responsible for anything I say. Don't take my advice as canon for anything in these video games. I'm also not complaining about or attacking video game designers. They can't design a bridge, I can't design a video game. We get it. This presentation is also not about Polybridge. I know a lot of you are probably expecting that. When I was gifted it, I played it for about 10 minutes and said, this feels like work and I'd rather not be doing this. Right? And then I'm also not going to mention Smash Brothers because Brian David Gilbert already did a whole OSHA thing on the Smash Brothers stages. He's much funnier than I am, much more attractive than I am. Please watch his thing instead. So let's just start on the basics. The American Association of Highway, State, and Transportation Officials, also known as AASHTO, say a bridge is 20 feet long and carries a road, a rail, or pedestrian traffic over an obstruction. All you gotta do is be over 20 feet and you're officially a bridge. They can be made of concrete, steel, timber. There's even some aluminum bridges. They're not very popular because aluminum is not really a great material, but sometimes, every now and then, somebody says, oh, this is interesting, let's make aluminum bridges. Stick with concrete or steel. And then every bridge in the country is inspected every 2 years at maximum. Some bridges, if there's a problem that we're trying to monitor, they'll inspect it once every 1 year or even 6 months, depending on it. And hopefully, if that's the case, they'll do some maintenance on it to make it look better. All these bridges here are in the state of Georgia. The one on the top left, that is the covered bridge, the oldest bridge in the state. That's in Cobb County. Don't ask me the road, I don't remember exactly. The one on the top right, that's the Talmadge in Savannah. If you've been down to Savannah and River Street, you've definitely seen that one. The one in the middle there is over the Savannah River. That's one of the few movable bridges in the state of Georgia. We don't really do movable bridges anymore. The department doesn't really like them, from what I understand. They are kind of a hassle to maintain, and a lot of them don't really move anymore. If you want to get new movable bridges, go to Louisiana or Florida, they got plenty. The one on the bottom left is the Northwest Corridor that goes up I-75 and 575 that carries those express lanes over there. My company worked on those years ago, went back when I was an intern, so technically I have my name on it. Again, please don't sue me. And then the one on the bottom right, I believe, is the Peachtree Creek Greenway. It's at least a pedestrian bridge that goes over a pretty large gorge. So yeah, all in the state of Georgia right here. So talking about some bridge types, the most basic one that you can get is a flat slab. It's all it is anywhere from like 10 to 12 inches of concrete and reinforced, and that's it. Usually pretty short spans, no more than like 30 or 50 feet, somewhere in that range. The most common one in the state of Georgia, a lot of the ones that I've designed, are beam bridges. So you see on the top left of the image there, it's just you get a beam down, you put a deck on top of it, and then you can drive on it. You also get truss bridges, which are, again, what Polybridge does, and that I don't really design a whole lot of. Usually see those more for pedestrian bridges. There are some roadway ones, but they're a little bit more expensive. Steel, at least in the state of Georgia, is a little bit more expensive. And then you get arch bridges. The one that's actually pictured here is what they call a spandrel arch, where you have additional what looks like columns going between the main arch and the deck of the bridge itself. And then the ones that everybody knows, suspension and cable stay. Those are the ones that have the big cables that hold it up. The difference between them being the suspension has one main cable that runs between the two towers, and then there are additional cables that hang from that main cable down to the deck. And then the cable stay, the cables go directly from the deck to the towers. That's the main difference between them. So they look similar, but they're designed completely different from each other. Just another disclaimer, I have not designed either of those two types of bridges. Those are for the really high up civil engineers, the ones that have the structural engineering license, which I don't have. And of course, those are pretty costly, definitely rarer. And you only see, Georgia only has 2 cable stayed and no suspension bridges as far as I can tell. So if you're unfamiliar with bridges and their anatomy, there's 3 basic components. You have the superstructure, which is what you drive on. That is the deck that I've been talking about. And then you have the substructure, where everything from the deck or the beams below. So any of the supports or piers, or what we call vents, is the other name for them. Everything from there into the ground is the substructure. And then the last thing is your foundation. What's shown on here on the top left is what they call a pile foundation, or a pile footing. So they drive these steel or pre-stressed concrete piles into the ground so deep until they either hit rock or get a lot of friction bearing, and then you put a foundation on top of that and build up from there. So we design from the top down and then build from the bottom up. And if you want to get a little bit more specific, you can see on the right there's some more specific bridge parts there, talking about those piles or the footings and the caps and so on and so forth. And then how we design them is that on the left you see that is a typical cross section. So when you are driving over a bridge, if you have what they call PSC girders or pre-stressed concrete girders, that is what holds the deck up. The deck is usually anywhere from 6 to 8 inches of concrete, reinforced concrete. So the deck sits on top of those beams, and then sometimes, not very often in Georgia, but sometimes they'll put some pavement on top of it, and then you have your barriers on either side to keep you from falling off. Please don't fall off. And then what we designed those for is that truck on the right there. That is straight from our code that we designed from. It is called the HL93 load, and it is 72 kips. Does anybody here know what a kip means?
Kilopound.
Kilopound, that's right, 1,000 pounds. When I was taking structural engineering classes, I thought that was a crazy way to do it, but because metric and English units, sure, let's mix them together and call it a kilopound. I don't know kilonewtons, so if you start talking to me in that, I'm not going to be able to help you, I'm sorry. And on the bottom right, you can see kind of from below what one of those beam bridges looks like. That is the most common type in Georgia. That's a lot of what I've designed is those pre-stressed concrete girders. That's what's cheapest, that's what's easiest, that's what we know how to do. We do still do steel bridges for longer spans. So if you get over, I'd say 150 feet long, that's when you start going to steel. If you got some really really tight curves, like if you got some really tight horizontal curves that you're driving through, that's when you look at steel. But for the most part, a lot of our solutions end up being pre-stressed concrete. Here's some common issues that you see. None of these are in the state of Georgia, so don't worry about these. The bottom left picture is a picture of scour. So that's when you're going over a waterway, the water will wash away the soil underneath a footing or part of your substructure. That can be an issue. That's one of the most common issues that you see in bridges is the scour that's happening underneath them. I'd say a vast majority of our bridges are over creeks or streams or rivers, and that is the main problem that you see. It's usually not a structural issue, it's usually a scour issue. Then you see some deterioration. This right here, it looks bad. I think that's actually a cross member for not any of the, or for any of this main steel members. So that one, like, it's probably not terrible. You still want to get it fixed. You don't want all of what they call section loss in there. You shouldn't be able to see through steel, or concrete for that matter. So that's some pretty severe deterioration. And then you get some concrete cracking and spalling. That's a pretty regular occurrence. Concrete is gonna crack. That's basically a thing that happens all the time. So when I say a crack, you can see the middle top picture. That's just a crack in a place. That's not really a problem. Certified bridge inspectors are taught what to look for in that kind of thing. And if you've taken engineering classes, you know what kind of cracks are actually indicative of something going wrong with the bridge. This one is at the support, isn't doing any of those things. It's just probably an end condition problem. The one on the bottom right is a little bit worse. That is what they call a spall. So what happens is that the concrete starts to crack because of just the forces or the temperature or shrinkage of the concrete, and then some water will get into it. That water will make the rebar rust, and that rust expands the reinforcement, and then that pops out the concrete itself. So that's what we call a spall or a pop out, or there's a million other names, whatever the inspector decides to call it at the time. And that is an issue where all you need to do is typically just patch it, but sometimes it can be indicative of a bigger issue overall. This one looks like it's in a main, what they call a T-beam, or just a regular plain reinforced concrete beam. That one you just definitely want to repair just so that the reinforcement doesn't continue to rust. And then joint leakage is the last most common problem, I would say, in almost every single bridge. If you have to put a joint in it, those joints are going to leak, they're going to pop out after 5 to 10 years, and they're always going to have to get replaced. I've done a lot of maintenance work, and every single maintenance job I've done is replace the joints in the bridge. Bridges are supposed to expand and contract like anywhere from 1 to 2 inches. They're not supposed to move otherwise. That's probably a seismic problem. But these joints are what we try to do, what we put into the bridge in order for it to expand and contract without causing other cracking in other places of the deck or the bridge. So, now that I've talked your ears off about bridge design, let's talk about video games. That's what you're all here for, right? All right, so I'm going to start with City Skylines. City Skylines is a, how do I describe it? It's like SimCity, but modernized. I've sunk a lot of hours into it. You build roads, you build bridges, you build cities, you just designate residential and commercial sections, and then you get this. So this is the first thing I'm going to talk about. So yes. One of the issues that I see in this is more of a roadway issue, actually. So when you've got a roadway, you want to make sure that if somebody is suddenly stopped further ahead of you, you want to be able to see that in time to brake. You can't do that on this bridge. It has very bad vertical curve issues, or sight distance issues is what we call it. The other issue on the bottom right, it looks like it is what I call the flat slab. It looks like it's kind of integral with that pier that's holding up there. But flat slabs, like I said, only go anywhere from 30 to 50 feet. There are at least 3 lanes of traffic and a lot of shoulder on that right there. There's no way that flat slab bridge can actually design out. That thing is going to fall. You put one truck over that thing and it's going to bend like crazy. Additionally, I was looking at the top of it, and thought, that seems normal, right? And then I looked a little closer, and why is there a manhole in the middle of the bridge? Like I said, those joints always leak because water gets everywhere. Water is your biggest problem with anything structural for bridges. If you put a manhole in the middle of it, why is the water going inside the bridge? You don't want that. And additionally, you probably have already noticed, there are light poles in the shoulder of that bridge. This is supposed to be an off-ramp style roadway right here. So you're going 60 miles an hour. If suddenly you have to veer out of the way of something, you're going to hit that light post. Those should be outside of the barrier. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So they tried. There are some good ones. This is a suspension bridge. That was not an easy sentence to say, which I didn't think was actually that terrible. There is a bit of an odd detail in the middle there where you have the cables running into a connector at the very middle. You usually want to make that cable continuous because you're going to see a lot of force right at the middle. If you get a truck right in the center of that 72,000 pound truck, that's going to put a lot of bending into, I should probably stand up for some of this, Can I do that? Oh my God, there's so many people here. So you're going to see a lot of bending in that middle of that bridge, so that connection has to be designed really well for that. But otherwise, fairly doable. Looks like there's a big tub-shaped girder in there. That is another bridge type. If you have to inspect that, you actually go inside of the tub. They're hollow. I've done that once, and thankfully it was 9 feet tall. Some of these ones that are only 3 or 4 feet tall in the middle, my company has a skateboard that you lay on top of to inspect it. It's great. Thankfully I have not done that. So those things at the very end, the end condition looks kind of weird because it's, it's all these polygons for the video games that are they're just trying to end the bridge. They don't really care. I'm not going to complain about it. Looks weird, but otherwise the supports seem normal. They're going into the ground. You usually don't see the footing. So overall, this one's good. Next, I'm going to talk about Stardew Valley. Farming sim, dating sim, whatever you want to call it. Definitely have data book these two. And so these look like nice bridges, right? Wrong, these are culverts. There's no way that these are over 20 feet long, at least the ones on the right. The one on the left, the really confusing thing about that is you need 300 pieces of wood to fix, right? Those are just going to be 2 planks. Personally, I think the mayor of the town is getting a little bit of crap under the table for all this material. And then for the ones on the right, usually, these are just simple little culverts that are going from one island to the next. You don't really need to design those out if you're just a small town that doesn't have any budget whatsoever except the graph that you're giving the mayor. And I would say with the 2 planks there, usually you want those cross supports to be on the bottom side because that is where a lot of the resistance comes from. The top side, you don't really see much, unless you're doing some kind of what they call negative moment, you're not going to really get anything out of those. So you want those in the bottom. Otherwise, not terrible. You need some railings on those, but again, probably not a really good budget for this. And here, an arch culvert is what you would call this. It seems fine. Had a couple issues with it. It looks like it's all river stone, which is very smooth stone. When you pour concrete, you want the stone that you use in it, what they call the aggregate, you need that to be really angular so that the concrete latches onto it, the cement in the middle of it. So when you use river stone, it's all very smooth and the cement can't really latch onto it, so it's not going to be as structurally stable. And then naturally, talking about that cement, it doesn't really look like there's mortar or grout in this. I mean, maybe you could argue that those dark lines between the stones are. I'm a little concerned about this. I mean, you can walk over it and be fine, but I'd be a little iffy walking over this. Oh, yeah. And then there's this thing. This actually is a bridge. It's not a culvert. And then I was looking at it thinking like, okay, it kind of makes sense. I kind of get it. And then, of course, looking a little closer, it's like, no, hang on, wait. That right side there, you see those little sticks that are trying to support that entire long span that's still broken. I don't think that's stable. There's no way that those little sticks, I think you have a center of gravity of that section that is further out from that. And if you have that, it doesn't seem like there's anything trying to hold it down. So that thing should be tipping over as it is. This valley, you should not be able to process with this, even when it's fixed, is the other thing. Because as you may notice, all of the planks that are going left to right, they aren't really attached to anything whatsoever. You can't see any beams underneath and holding them up. Those things shouldn't be standing whatsoever at all. So when it's repaired, those, what they call transverse boards, those things should just be falling straight down into the ravine. So this thing, I'm not a big fan of either. All right, let's move on to a game called Factorio. Does anybody know what the factory must do? Grow, thank you. This game just recently put in train bridges. So these are from their dev blog where they have a elevated track and you've got the support on the right. Looks a little wonky, but if it designs out, sure. The problem is, I don't think it designs out. So you've got all of these tracks crossing at these high speeds out along these really sharp curves, and you don't really have any beams underneath all of this track here. There is no way that train load in the bottom right can possibly cross over this without falling straight through. Every single one of the axles of a train, at minimum, is 40,000 pounds. Those things are huge. And then additionally, like I said, those are some sharp curves. And if you played the game, those trains aren't slow. They speed around those things. I believe there was a movie that had like a whole thing about a train. No, it was a real life situation where a train had to slow down, but its brakes were failing, and then because it was coming up upon a curve, and it couldn't make the curve at the speed it was going at. So you got to be really careful about trains going over these curves like this. I don't think these developers know exactly how bridges work, but again, I'm not trying to attack, I'm just saying, this isn't going to stand. I would not stamp this as a professional engineer, that's for sure. Speaking of trains, we're going to talk about a game called Railgrade. It's a little bit more indie game. Does anybody know this game? Nobody at all? Awesome.
We get to learn.
It was gifted to me by a friend. It is like a real-time strategy train delivery game. So you're trying to get resources from one area to the next. And this is what the trains look like. And there are beams under this one, thankfully. The beams seem really short. Again, that's 80,000 pounds per axle at most, or 40,000 at least. So I don't know, usually if you see a train bridge in real life, the beams are really close together because there's a lot of load that you have to account for in those. So I'd love to see calculations on this, but maybe it's not awful. Well, there's also these curves in here. Steel shouldn't really do that for a sharp curve. And when you're going down the slope like that, you need a little bit of a nicer angle other than, otherwise your train is going to just hit the ground and that's it. And additionally, if anybody here is local, you'll understand that one of the major other problems that you can see is storing materials underneath the bridge. You don't want that to happen. Hey, nobody was hurt this one, okay? Let's talk about Baldur's Gate 3. Great game, fantastic game. And decent bridges, kind of. This one, I think, like the braking kind of makes sense on this one. This is another arch bridge. You get a big chunk of bridge that fell straight through. All this from Act 1, so no spoilers, I hope. So I don't think that the breakaway should have been a solid piece. I think it would have all crumbled apart if it was already going to fall like that. There also appear to be some river stones in here with some grout between it at least, but I think that's still a worry. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. We'll come to that one, trust me. And then this one, actually fine, a good bridge. Just a couple arches. You may get some what I call scour issues earlier because you've got a lot of water going right through some rocks. But I think it needs to be inspected and it'll be okay. But otherwise, for the most part, the arches are working exactly how I expect. You've got the keystone in the middle of the arches that are covered by the plants that you probably need to get rid of in order for the bridge to not get overrun by vegetation. But no problems here. Then I found this one. Listen, I have nothing against goblins, but I don't think you want to trust their bridges. So what you see in this is you get some ropes that are really close to the edge of where they're tying to it. You get these main tower-looking things that are like sticking out to the side that are just drilled in rock, or even if they are drilled in rock or not. I don't know that they are. You've got a chasm underneath. That's very dangerous in the game if you played it. I'm sure you've thrown something into it or somebody. And those, if those are not drilled, those timber pieces are not drilled into the rock, then they're just sitting on it. Also, extremely dangerous. Those things are going to start slipping. You're going to see some problems. Again, do not want to cross this one. All right, let's move on to Pokemon. I have one bridge from this, and it's the bridge that I grew up with. Nugget Bridge. Except I don't know if it's a bridge. So on the left, it looks kind of like they're trying to make a bridge, and it looks like water may be flowing underneath it. And on the right, it looks legitimate. Like, okay, I can't see the underside of it, so I can't really judge it that much. But in later generations, there's the one on the left. That's not going over, that's just going over land. It's just flat land. You don't need to build that bridge. But then you go to
Wetland, it's protected.
Oh, we can't talk about environmental issues. That would be another hour at least. Oh, I'm running out of time. Oh no. So it's just, I can't even tell if it's bridge, so I can't even judge this one. Let me talk about Splatoon. Of course, my favorite game. I've played way too many hours of this. And there's a level called Hammerhead Bridge. It's a bridge, right? Looks pretty fine. Like the support seems normal. You got the traffic on top. You can see it from underneath. I love that. And then I look at these gusset plates, which are, you see on the bottom right what they're supposed to look like, but the bolts aren't like connecting to anything but itself for most of them. And there's so few of them compared to what you need. This thing, I love Splatoon, but they did not do a good job on these gusset plates. And they also didn't do a great job underneath when you've got these big barges going through there. This is just asking for one of these barges to run into this bridge. So you got to put some protections. They have things called fenders or dolphins, which is also a great term, that can at least hopefully redirect these barges away. So I think they need to do something about that. Additionally, this is a level called Scorched Gorge. There should be a lot more deflection in this bridge that you see. I wouldn't want to walk over this thing. It's barely connected as it is through bolts that are through the center of the joint that don't make any sense. And barely a connection whatsoever. Just be careful with this one. And then the one that this presentation is mostly concerned about, Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom. So I fired up Tears of the Kingdom, and I said, okay, let me go take a picture of the bridge that inspired this whole presentation. And I hadn't played in several months. So I thought maybe I should go give it a shot. And then, then I would be able to take easy pictures of this bridge. So I landed in the water. And arch bridges don't do this. This should be falling. This makes zero sense whatsoever. If you lose an entire column in an arch, that's going to fall. Arches work in compression primarily. So if you don't have a place for that compression to go, it should be falling in the middle. I love the design idea. I love it, but it does not make sense structurally. So I went a little closer, took a few more pictures, looked inside, and there's just bricks inside. Not sure why. It seems like a waste of money to be able to do something like that. So I got a little closer, and you know what I found? I found something that made me very concerned. I found this guy. I think this thing is causing problems with the Hylian infrastructure. I think that there is a conspiracy afoot that the Koroks are doing something to the bridges in this place. We need to do something about this. Sorry, just a little heated. There's this thing. They call it the Digog Suspension Bridge. Oh, yeah. It's not a suspension bridge. It's barely a bridge at all. You have just wooden planks and some wooden pieces that are, again, also just touching rock. They're not even going into it. If you try to drill some timber into some rock, you're going to destroy the timber. It doesn't also, I wouldn't walk on this thing. I don't know how Lynx has survived this whole encounter. But Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom don't have all bad bridges. This is the Proxim Bridge west of the Dueling Peaks. This one looks okay. There are some cracks in it. You need to address that. Again, some vegetation. There's some issues with the parapets that are on either side. So if you're riding a horse across this thing, you've got to stay in the center, otherwise you're going to fall off this thing. But for the most part, makes sense. It's an arch bridge. That's all there is to it. So I was actually pretty happy with this one. I thought I was going to have to complain a lot more, but I didn't have to. And then some honorable mentions, because I'm running out of time. This one is from Metaphor Revantasio. This is called the Murky Graveyard. It's very messed up a little bit, but the bridges look good. It's a graveyard underneath, and there's just a bunch of steel trusses underneath. I didn't have any problems with this. I don't know why they have so many of them, but not a problem, I don't think, overall. And then the other honorable mention, this is Vancouver Velocity in Mario Kart 8. Yes, I did get World, but not in time for this presentation. There's a big sign that says suspension bridge. It's actually a suspension bridge. So thank you so much for coming out. I think I have 5 minutes for putting it in.
You have half an hour.
Oh my God. I thought it ended at 6. We have so much time to talk. Oh my goodness. All right, I saw your hand first.
In Mario Kart and other video games, we often see rainbows used as bridges. I'm not a material scientist, but can you walk me through the durability of rainbows and the safety that might be arranged?
Yeah, the durability of rainbows. No, none. Light is, at least from what I've seen in the research, is not a very strong structural material. I would love to put more of a spotlight on it. Please don't laugh. But I think it's very dangerous to put cars on it when you have not actually load tested these bridges. I think Rainbow Road, it should stay a road, it should stay on the ground. Putting it up in the air is just asking for problems. I saw another hand over here, I think. Yeah.
May I hear more about universe bridges, considering they're so prominent in that region?
Universe?
Unova. from Pokemon Black and Pokemon
Oh,
White.
so that's one of the generations I actually haven't played, unfortunately. Unfortunately, my video game experience is going to limit what I can actually say about bridges. So if I have not played the game, the only one that I can maybe speak on that I haven't played is maybe Shadow of the Colossus. That one, it will be, if I get to do this again, also, if you like this panel, please rate it highly so I can do it again. If I get to do it again, I'd love to get some screenshots of that because I looked at it just from what I could find online, and it's a wild concept. Some of the game behind you as well, yes.
So classic video game bridge goes over lava. If you were to build a bridge over lava in real life, don't know why you would do that, but how would you, what safety things would you take into consideration?
That's a good question because as you saw earlier, there was a bridge that melted, basically. So there are some fire codes that you get in the IBC, the International Building Code. That is where I would probably look first for anything that's heat related. Concrete definitely doesn't really work well with heat. Steel absolutely does not work well with heat. So you probably actually want to elevate it as much as you can away from the lava so that radiant heat doesn't start to affect the bridge. It's also very dangerous for the inspectors, so you definitely want to put a net underneath. I would love to not fall into lava if I'm trying to inspect a bridge. Haven't done that yet, haven't fallen off and down in the water yet. I've been nervous once or twice, but that's a whole other story. All right, so I'll hand way in the back.
So are you familiar with the Twilight Princess Bridge?
Not, I'm sorry.
So in that game, they rip out a chunk of it to prevent you from going to a certain area, and later they just teleport the chunk back in.
You need to do some load testing on that. Yeah, again, not very trustworthy right off the bat. Do they rip it out right in the middle or near one of the supports?
They rip it out between two supports.
Between two supports. Okay, you can probably actually replace the section between those supports. That's actually what they did on that so that burning bridge, if you're not a local or did not hear the story, that was a fire that got set underneath Interstate 85 in North Georgia, or Northwest Georgia. And that one was, all burnt down, but what they did is that they came through and just replaced the spans that they needed to. So you don't have to take down the whole thing in order to fix it. But I would definitely not trust the teleportation method. All right, you.
So in a lot of video games, you see a lot of bridges that float either via magic or something else, but a lot of times it's closest to indicate magnets.
Mm-hmm.
Could you float a bridge on magnets and actually have it hold enough of a load?
My concern there, I think, would not necessarily be even the load capacity. I think you start worrying about what happens to the vehicles that are traveling over it. Because, cars are made mostly of metal, right? I'm not a car expert, but I know that there's a lot of metal in that. And so for the amount of force that you have to lift the bridge up with, that magnetized force is going to do something to the trucks that are driving over it, I think. So you have to be very careful. You probably need to get, a magnetometer? That might be the phrase. You probably want to measure where that flux is and see what kind of issues you're seeing magnetically before you put any cars over it. Or, again, as long as you get tall enough to get over where that field is causing a problem, then I think maybe you can put some cars over it. How to inspect that? I'm not really sure. I think it'd be cool to put on a metal suit and float up to it. Also not the safest thing, because if you inspect a bridge, especially if you have to go in midair, I actually was in Oakland, California, inspecting the steel truss bridge up there, and you had to wear a whole harness, you had to be tied off twice everywhere, nighttime inspections, it's a great time. But there's a lot of safety features that go into that, so it'd be a lot of consideration on how to make it safe to inspect as well. Yes?
You see a lot of rope bridges in fiction in general. What's the longest a rope bridge could be and still be safe for pedestrian travel?
So some of the examples in real life, I don't know exactly where they are, but I know there is a bridge in South America that gets redone every year by, I believe, some natives in the area. And I think that they get it to go probably 80 or 90 feet, I think, from the pictures that I've seen of it. So you can go a decent span for that. So pedestrian loading is actually a lot lighter than truck loading. Weirdly enough, trucks are a lot heavier than people. For context, about 90 pounds per square foot is what we usually design for. Where trucks, 72,000 pounds, a little bit different. There are some situations where pedestrian loading does control over trucks. But for those kind of things, yeah, about 90 foot, 100 foot is probably what you can get out of a rope bridge, as long as you've got it tight very tightly and make sure that you're very careful going over it too. I think there's also the rope bridge in Chattanooga at Rock City. That one, at least when I went there as a kid, felt very long. So, but if it was not safe, hopefully they would know to close it. Hopefully, that's why I didn't actually go over it. So, it could go pretty decent long span for that. Yes? Yeah, cool, yeah.
So if you come to like a canyon or something that you want to span with a bridge, or for a video game saying Link comes to a canyon, and you're on one side, and you got to get your stuff on the other side to make the bridge, how do?
Yeah, how do you get your stuff from one side of the canyon to the other? Hopefully you have an access road to the other side. If you don't, in your Link or in that universe, you shoot an arrow with a rope. But again, I'm not OSHA, so I can say whatever I want. That is one way to do it. If you already have people over there, you can do that and start tying the rope on both sides and do a, what do you call it, when you're gliding on top of a rope? Yeah, zip line, thank you. Yeah, so you can zip line some stuff over as long as you put it at the right elevation so it doesn't stop in the middle. Because that brings up a whole other host of other problems. So that would be probably the quickest way to do it. And no, I can't say that because I'm not going to be meeting contractors. Yes, in the back corner there.
Have you ever heard of a podcast called Well, There's Your Problem?
I have, but I haven't listened to it.
Damn it! Okay.
There's a lot of
I have a follow-up question then if you didn't. What are the differences in load cycling between a bridge for trucks and for a train? And can you ever have one bridge serve both?
There are some bridges that are like double-decker bridges that have trains on one line and trucks on the other.
Okay.
There is what they call in design fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever taken a paper clip and like just bent it back and forth a bunch of times, you're fatiguing that paper clip.
Mm-hmm.
So you see those same load cycles when you drive a truck over a steel bridge.
Okay.
It's definitely a big consideration in steel bridges, even if it's a train or a truck bridge.
So the fatigue design and considerations are similar for both of them?
Yes, they would be. But you're
Okay.
just looking at much heavier loads for a train bridge versus a truck bridge.
Okay.
And you also have to know roughly how many trains or trucks go over it per day. That also, there's a lot of what they call fatigue details.
Yeah.
And it categorizes them based on, what your amount of trucks go over them, or what your average daily traffic would be for that. So those details are what you're really worried about for fatigue or steel.
Cool, thank
Concrete
you.
doesn't really see that, but you also don't really see concrete train bridges. You see more concrete truck bridges. But there are some aspects of fatigue that you can look at for it, but it never controls the side.
Thank you.
I saw you in the purple?
Yeah, so in a lot of like apocalypse like video games like The Last of Us, a lot of stuff is like super overgrown and super green. And so like if there was a bridge that was fully overgrown, like all of it, is that bad?
Yes. So what that also means is that there's a lot of water getting in the bridge. And water, like I said, that causes all the rust and the reinforcement. And can cause a lot of deterioration of steel beams. So if you're starting to really get a lot of vegetation in it, that means the bridge is losing a lot of its carrying capacity. That is one that you want to try to avoid if you can. Yeah, a lot of the times whenever we're doing maintenance projects is we will say, hey, do this, and also clear out the vegetation that's causing problems around the area. Sometimes that means taking a tree or two, sometimes that just means clearing out a bunch of vines, or we're in Georgia, so kudzu. But for the most part, yeah, you want to get rid of that. That can definitely cause problems. And the roots will get in the cracks too, so that'll open up the cracks more, much like it would for any like stone work or something like that. So you definitely want to get rid of it. I saw somebody way in the back there. Yeah. Billy, you're not allowed.
If you play Death Stranding, are bridge babies effective tools to connect us to the beach?
Are bridge babies effective tools? They don't have the certifications required. I went through a lot of schooling, and if a baby took my place, I would be upset. I think it's, honestly, I think a baby taking my job, I'm a little bit more worried about than AI taking my job at this point. So I would recommend against having very small children and toddlers working on bridges. They would not necessarily know exactly how to do math. So definitely not a recommendation.
They can fit in those inspection places better though.
They can, and that has its other set of issues. But like I said, I use a skateboard to have to do anything that's like 4 feet tall because I'm not going to kill my back doing that. I'm 33. So we'll see. Way in the back 2 corner.
who would take on the brunt of the liability if there was if you were inspecting the bridge with a few fallen columns, but someone with a professional magician's license promised to keep it popped up?
Yeah, so it definitely I think would fall on those professional magicians first, typically. Real life example, there was a bridge that goes from Arkansas to Tennessee in Memphis, that there was a massive crack that was not seen for years. I think it was found probably 3 or 4 years, big crack in the steel, and it's been there since at least 2016. And the inspectors who inspected it got in a lot of trouble. So the inspectors definitely need to catch any major issues like that. But if it is due to design, that professional magician definitely needs to have his wizard's book taken away. Billy, you had a question.
So in a lot of games, the solution to a puzzle is like a bridge suddenly appears. Like it comes down from the ceiling, it extends out from the wall next to you. Is that ever a thing in real life, like rapid deployment bridge? 85?
Yeah, 85. Yeah, I-85. It is wild. So with 85, I actually talked with some of the people at the Georgia Department of Transportation about it, and it fell on a Thursday. By Sunday, they had the design redone because they worked basically all weekend, and Monday they were pouring concrete. So it can go really quick if you spend way too much money trying to get it back up, and it's a major interstate in the state of Georgia where there's a billion cars going through it every day. Movable bridges do exist. I don't know if there's any that like telescope out. A lot of the movable bridges are either bascule or drawbridges, or any ones that like rotate around. So they don't disappear after they go away, but they are movable. So they do appear, and suddenly you can drive over them.
Good answer.
Right here.
On that extendable bridge thing, if you drive down past Fort Moore on your way back to wherever you're going, the Army does have several like bridge deployers that are like parked right next to the road for their tanks, which are also parked next to those, which is kind of neat. So yeah.
Yeah, and I bet a lot of those are probably what they call Bailey bridges. So if you worked in the Army or like the Army Corps of Engineers, there are what they call modular steel bridges that they can set up and break down pretty quick. I won't say where because I'm don't work for my company. We're not speaking for my company, but there is a lot of people use that as a temporary bridge for trying any like stage construction. If there's anything that we have to get people across a bridge, but there's no other good detour, you can put a temporary bridge over it as long as it's the right solution essentially. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so sometimes in video games you have bridges that go up and underwater. What is this? What is the logistical problems with that, besides the fact that it's moving a lot?
As a civil engineer, all the logistical problems with movable bridges are mechanical problems.
Okay.
And again, water is always an issue with bridges. So soaking the bridge for a while, you don't really want to do that. You can put some protection. There is what they call epoxy coating for reinforcement. A lot of our interstate bridges in Georgia have epoxy coating on the deck reinforcement to hopefully keep it from corroding. I don't know how well it works because it can sometimes get damaged when it's getting installed, but at the same time there are protection you can put in place. Mechanically, I can't really speak on how they actually lift or lower them. You just have to make sure that those forces of lifting and lowering them are not causing any actual structural issues. So it would be something we would look at when we're designing the bridge, is what would you expect when it goes up and down? Yes?
This person in red's half hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. In red with the horns.
Thoughts on the speed highway and radical highway bridges of Sonic Adventure 1 and Sonic Adventure 2, and even if you have not seen them, I do note that the speed highway bridge does have a corkscrew roller coaster style.
Corkscrews. So one of the things we include in our design is what we call impact, which is an additional 30% on top of that 72,000 pounds. And that is when the truck basically hits the bridge, not actually hitting the bridge, but like when it first lands, it suddenly sees an impact load of that vertical force going down in that. So when you're doing a corkscrew, you're worrying about that at first because now you're also ramping up really quickly. It's on the trucks to make sure they're driving fast enough. And then structurally, that would probably be a pretty thick piece of steel or concrete that you'd have to go through in order to do that. I know some skateboarders are able to do corkscrews. I don't trust a truck to really do a corkscrew, and I don't think they would want to do one either. A train? Probably not either. And then I think Did you have a question as well?
No.
Okay. Yes.
Are you familiar with wooden trestle train bridges here in the state of Georgia?
In the state of Georgia, I'm not too familiar.
The GNPR in LAJ, Georgia has at least one or two historic bridges. We have to show you more later.
Yeah, there's also, so a lot of what my family's vacations were when I was growing up, we were driving up to Missouri, whole other story there. But there is one in Tennessee that's this huge, probably like 100, 200 feet in the air trestle bridge that's for a railroad. And when I was growing up, I thought that was cool as heck, right? Like, oh, there's this huge bridge that we're driving under. Now, as a structural engineer, I don't know that I trust that the timber's all good anymore. I don't know if they run any trains. I've never seen a train on it, but I'm a little iffy on that one there, just because it's so much wood, and wood can definitely deteriorate. I would say faster than steel or concrete in general.
Where at in Tennessee?
I think it's off of I-24 once you get out of Chattanooga. And like you dip down to 59, I-59 back into Georgia, and then you drive back up. It's somewhere in that area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh gosh, so many questions. Yellow? In the yellow?
On a personal note, do you feel like there's any type of bridge that's overrepresented in video games?
Arch bridges. Because they're easy to design from a video game perspective, and they're everywhere. There are so few actual arch bridges in the state. You see those more in culverts, but even then, those are just boxes instead of actual arches. The oldest bridge in the country is an arch bridge. It's from the 1600s in Pennsylvania. It's still out there carrying traffic. And it's just a stone arch. And those things, like if you look at the Roman aqueducts, those things are still standing because those work. But in video games, I saw so many arches that I was like, please, somebody give me a B bridge. In the white shirt with glasses?
Yeah, so a lot of video games have like giant fantastical creatures, obviously. What would be, from your perspective, like the dangers of that compared to, obviously a lot of roads are designed for vehicle travel where it's traveling at a smoother kind of pace and all this?
Yeah, a lot more impact load. A lot more impact load. I mean, you're just walking along in, say, Dark Souls or Breath of the Wild, and suddenly a dragon lands in front of you. Those things have to be able to take that force of not just the dragon's weight, but the weight of it like falling down at that velocity. It's not something I'm designed for. We don't have too many dragons in the state of Georgia. But it is definitely something to watch out for, I would say. Yes, right here.
Kind of follow up on the previous question. What type of bridges do you think are cool? What type of bridges would you like to see more in video games that you think would be cool?
Oh, more in video games. I mean, everybody loves the suspension bridges and the cable stay bridges, and like those are the iconic ones. Those are very cool. There are some like interesting looking trusses, like the ones that I kind of showed off are like your standard ones. If you get some what they call a cantilever bridge, I think that'd be cool. I think there's one in the same trip that I would take, I think in Paducah, Kentucky, great place to be. That is a cantilever truss bridge where it's you got two piers and there's like it's basically acting as a cantilever on either side. I think that kind of thing would be pretty neat to see. Any of those signature bridge types is definitely something I want to see more of. As much as I have designed beam bridges, they're kind of a dime a dozen. Like, there's a lot of them. I don't need to see them personally. I've seen so many in design, and it would probably remind me a little bit more of work at that point. So. Yes?
In the video game series that I always play, like Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, and Warriors of Orochi, they have like a ton of bridges in those games. But what would you say about the design of those bridges that were used back in the 2nd to 3rd century AD China and the feudal era of Japan?
Yeah. I thought you were going to ask about like Roman style bridges. I was like, yeah, those stone arches, I can talk about those. I'd have to probably see them a little bit more. I know that, those old bridges were definitely built to last. Centuries ago, they knew that stone arches, like civil engineers have been around for very long, but they never called them civil engineers until 100, 200 years ago, I'd say. So I think that's probably a lot of what you would see is those kind of stone bridges or some kind of arch in order to make sure that they're going to be okay. I think maybe you're talking about the ones that have like no joints in between them or no connectors. I'm not entirely familiar myself, unfortunately.
Okay, that's all right, but thank you though.
Yeah. All right, I got still plenty of time. Yes, again.
I know you did say that arch bridges are overused in games. That said, I would still like to ask, what are your thoughts about Archarodon? a Pokemon who literally transforms into the shape of a bridge. The Pokemon, as far as I know, is not 20 feet long, so but it's still a shape of a bridge.
You know, I have my list of like my Pokemon team, but it's, you know, about 3 Pokemon long that are my favorite. I might actually have to see if that's going to be added to that team.
That was a very, very recent introduction.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Oh man, my friend Sean in the back is probably going to kill me for not knowing that one. I saw somebody way in the back. Yeah.
Following up on the question of the gentleman over here earlier, with the large animals and fantastical creatures, you know, designing for the impact is all well and good, but what about the vibrations caused by their different gates?
That's a really good point. I mean, some of you may have heard of how whenever the army marches over a bridge, they have to march out of step because you start vibrating the bridges at a certain frequency, and that could cause a lot of structural issues with them. So if you're, you know, hoarding a whole lot of I don't know, fantastical creatures, unicorns or something across a bridge, you want to make sure that they're not all stepping at the same time for sure. We actually do have in the pedestrian specifications, there are things for vibrations in those steel truss bridges. That's where you see a lot of that the most. If you ever walk around the Brave Stadium, you'll definitely feel those steel trusses bouncing a little bit when people are walking around there. So that's definitely something that I think the designers may not have considered at that point, because it's not something we usually think about with our bridges moving. We only think about how they expand, contract laterally, and not really how that vibration affects it. I think I saw a question way in that corner. Yes. Yeah.
So I was going to say that Tacoma Narrows Bridge is a good example of resident.
Oh yeah. Tacoma Narrows is definitely one of those ones that we in doing bridges hear about a lot of the time.
But I was going to ask, so like with your professional ethics and with a lot of like dearth of funding for transportation, how do you deal with that when you find things that like you may bother you, but you have to deal with, like because your company pressure or funder pressure? How do you deal with that day to day? Do you lose sleep?
Ethics we take very seriously. If you're working for a good company, which I would pray that everybody is, you bring it up to somebody and you continue to follow that chain. If they say no, it's not a problem, but you as a professional know. You have to keep bringing that up further and further. I believe there is a board of ethics that you can report to as well. Thankfully, I've not really ran into that many ethical issues. I've never had to close a bridge due to inspection. I have heard of some in my company closing a couple of small bridges, you know, little county bridges that see 3 cars a day, just from some structural issues. But ethics are definitely always come first. Like safety is the top priority. Even if we are trying to like get something to barely work, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If we see something out in the field, like, hey, this steel beam is completely deteriorated, I personally have no problem jumping on top of the bridge and saying, nobody go walk over this anymore, or nobody drive over this anymore. We have had 1 or 2 cops called just like stop on, you know, right before the bridge to say, no, this is closed, because it just was unsafe. So if you're getting pushback on that, you need to push yourself back into that. Even though I know it's like, you know, professionally dangerous for you, I personally would rather speak up than say nothing at all. And I think that's how everybody should do it, personally. Oh, there's so many more questions. Yeah, right here. You said you're a structural engineer, right?
Yeah. You got me thinking of things I never thought of my whole career, but how do you account for the trolls under the bridge?
So they are a bit of a hassle. If we have to call in somebody to help us inspect the bridge and get them to move along, I don't want to bribe anybody. I just said ethics were key. We can't be bribing people, right? We need to call somebody to help us out with that. I know they love to charge all their tolls and everything, but they don't own the bridge. The state owns the bridge, or the county owns the bridge. They should not be charging tolls for a bridge that they don't own.
But is that a reimbursable expense from your employer in that case? You gotta get done by the end of the day, right?
Man, that is an expense report we're gonna have to talk about. Yeah, it depends on how much gold it is. Really.
Okay.
Yeah, how much time.
Thank you.
I got 10 minutes left still. Way in the back there, right down the middle. Yeah.
So to follow up on the questions about the Dark Souls, we talked about the impact loading for potential dragons landing on the bridge. is there any conceivable way to prevent the fire breath from causing problems?
Oh, the fire breath. Again, bridges, especially concrete and steel, very vulnerable to fire. Again, as we've seen. Stone will probably work a little bit better, but I think the route between the stones would be an issue, so you need to get something that can really resist fire. Again, I would point you to the IBC, the International Building Code first for fire resistances. One thing with fire resistance, especially in buildings, from what I understand, I have a friend who's an architect up in Maryland, and it's basically you have to give enough time for people to get out of the building, or you have to get enough time to get people off the bridge. So if you are adventuring and you see a dragon start to breathe fire on you, I would recommend leaving. That way that your bridge is going to be safe when you get back there, and hopefully the dragon leaves you alone. Hopefully. But if not, at least you wouldn't, if you get off there and onto the regular road, hopefully the dragon doesn't follow you, but if it does, you're not going to die due to a structural collapse. It'll just be the dragon's teeth. Yeah, purple.
So a classic fantasy trope is the duel on the bridge. If you were to duel on a bridge, what bridge would you choose?
Oh, that's such a tough question. There's so many bridges out there. Georgia has 15,000 bridges. There's a lot to choose from. I mean, the Talmadge down to Savannah feels like the right choice. Just because you can run up the cables onto the towers and have a cool fight up there. You maybe slide down after somebody if they're if you're trying to get chase. Suspension bridges would be nice because you can fight on the cables as well. I mean, I think that would just be nice to cinematic.
It also crosses jurisdiction, so you can go to South Carolina.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So now now that the GSP aren't going to follow me anymore. Now it's going to be South Carolina. I think that's probably where I would go. Yeah. All right, Steph.
Great. So you showed the truck that is the way that you test or estimate load. What would the load testing ideal be in a fantasy setting for you?
Ideal load testing in a fantasy setting. So similar to stories I've heard, I don't know how true this is, you probably want to load up a bunch of barrels with water in it, because those get pretty heavy. They're about the weight of a person. And you can probably load up a couple caravans of that, because you don't want just the one. You want to make sure that you've got enough loaded there, enough water on your bridge, in barrels, not just sitting on your bridge, just loaded on there so that you can see how that bridge reacts to that if you're doing a full load test. I will say we don't really do a whole lot of bridge load tests in the States, from what I understand, because if it fails, it breaks the bridge, and now we have to pay for a new bridge. So the load, what we call load rating, is where we try to do it theoretically and mathematically. I did about 5 months of that at the bridge maintenance unit at GNOC. And it's just saying, okay, if this steel beam has lost this much of its section area, or if there's this crack here in this concrete, how does that affect the capacity of the bridge in a theoretical sense? And we have so many load factors and so much like, hey, we're saying 72,000 pounds, but we're multiplying that by thing after thing after thing to make sure that we're still good. Yes, Michael.
So you said that the majority of the bridges that you've designed have been some form of pre-stressed concrete or steel. What real or fantastical material, assuming you can manipulate it to create a bridge in some fashion, would you want to use to create a bridge for fun?
Oh, for fun. Yeah, I love doing work for fun.
Yeah.
For sure.
You're here.
I'm not actually, they're not paying me. God, I wish. What fantastical material would I use?
Real or fantastical.
Real
you
or
have not
fantastical,
used before to create a bridge.
Yeah, I think it would be very funny to do like a softer rubber so that you get a lot of vibrations and you're like bouncing around as you drive. Like those Mario Kart levels where you bounce on the mushrooms. I think that's what I would want to do. Make it like a bouncing house for a car. Yes.
College Winterhold, the bridge leading up to that in Skyrim. Your thoughts?
I haven't played Skyrim. I have played so many Nintendo games, and I know I put on my Steam hours up there. It's a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity 2.
Hey.
And Play-Doh, which has 0 bridges in it. Yes.
One thing you see in video games is the spine of some giant monster being used as a bridge. What's the feasibility of doing that?
Oh, you probably have to ask a biologist about creature spines and how good they are. Because I think, and you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, there are like mechanics behind like how strong a bone is, right? yeah, there's actual like hardness and like strength of how strong a bone is. I imagine bones are not that strong for more than a couple people to walk on. I don't like having my bones walked on. Yeah, very good to know. Thank you. Oh, jeez. I think that would be one thing that you want to load test first. You want to get some kind of non-scenting thing on there, like some kind of cart or something, if it's wide enough for that, to test it out first before you really start walking across it. Depends on how recently dead it is too. If all the other organic matter is gone, it's probably starting to get a lot more brittle. And brittleness is especially something that you have to watch out for in steel bridges. So imagine it's similar, not the same, but definitely at least similar in how you want to make sure that it's not all going to crack at once. Kind of a side tangent to that is that all of our concrete bridges and steel bridges are designed for what they call a progressive failure. So you are going to see a concrete beam crack first before it falls. You're going to see a steel beam deform before it falls. That gives the inspectors time. This happens over the entire lifespan of a bridge, which happens 50 to 75 years. So that gives the inspectors enough time to catch it and say, hey, we need to fix this. And that gets on the maintenance list, and as long as we get the funding, we should be able to fix all these problems.
Yeah.
But anything like that serious, always goes to the top of the list. So those progressive failures are the things we want to look at, and bones fail quickly from what I understand. Yes?
So you mentioned Shadow of the Colossus. How would you define or categorize that bridge? Is it just a fancy arch bridge, or is it worse?
So it is an arch bridge. Without the pictures, I can't really explain it too well. The compression in it is, yeah, looking at it right now. The compression needs to go two ways, but it's only one arch leading up to the bridge deck, and just does that a million times. The issue at the end of that bridge is how much force you're pushing into whatever is at the end of that bridge, that support.
So sketchy castle.
It's very sketchy, yeah. And if they're building that kind of bridge, I'd be very wary of how much force that's taking, and if that's actually taking. Additionally, from the screenshots I saw, it's also sitting on massive piers that have 3 columns per. So not only is it these weird arches, it's doing additional force on this additional pier. It's a very strange one. Again, if you rate this highly, I can do this next year. I'll definitely talk about Shadow of the Colossus. Very weird one. Very weird one. Yes.
Classic video game bridge failure. The hero's running along, the bridge is failing behind him. How realistic is that?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Depends on how fast you run if you're going to survive. So it makes the most sense if all the centers of the spans are failing first. If you get to a support and that support goes, both spans ahead and back from it are going to fail at one time. You do have some time, but I don't think, I'm sure everybody here is really athletic. I don't think anybody's going to outrun that. It's a very quick thing. Kind of related to that, there was one that failed in Pennsylvania back in 2021 or so. And that had several cars on it because they didn't have the time to get off because it happened so quickly. Gravity is very effective. So realistically, if you are Sonic or if you are in Mario Kart, maybe you'll be able to get off the bridge fast enough. But it is all going to progressive failure kind of makes sense. Depends on how also it's starting to fail. If everything's like the Shadow of the Colossus bridge, where it all starts to go forward at one time, then you're going to see a lot of the entire structure at once go at the same time. But if you've got like a domino effect, there is some realism there, but I wouldn't really put much stock in it, to be honest. 6:30? Okay. We have hit time. Thank you so much for being here.